My name is Mischelle McMillin. I'm the Director of Business Transformation. As Joe said, I've worked here for some total of over 20-some years. I left in the middle some places and then just decided that really when I needed to come back here, St. Francis has been my home since I was a baby nurse, and this is just where my heartstrings are pulled, and I'm here for the mission every day. So I welcome you guys to St. Francis. My background, again, is nursing. I worked in case management, quality management, and then when Joe came way back 10 years ago, I moved into the business transformation department and been there ever since. So just want to introduce you to my team. I don't know if you guys got to meet Christy Sanders back here. She's been with you. She is a part of our team, and she functions as our project coordinator. To your far left, that's Allison Lataka. I'm not sure if you guys had a chance to meet her. She's one of our green belts. The tall guy in the back, that's Mark Ryan, and he is our lean expert, and he's a joy, brings lots of experience to our team. And then you guys know the good-looking guy there on the right, Joe? Right, he's our corporate director. Beth Lipinski just recently took an opportunity to expand her career in predictive analytics. So she's not with us any longer, but she was part of our predictive analytics team. So my message here is for me, it's surrounding yourself with good people. I have folks that are lean experts. I have Six Sigma people. I have people who can keep us on task and keep us focused and moving in the right direction, and that they embody the mission and values of the sister. And so I feel like surrounding yourself with good team members is probably the first part to really creating that culture of continuous improvement, or Kaizen. And that's really is our mission, is creating that culture of continuous improvement. I've heard a lot about with respect to people. And I think that's really the emphasis with Kaizen and creating that culture. And for us, it's really how we want to continue our ministry. So anybody recognize these gentlemen?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Joe mentioned Norm Bodak, and Norm Bodak is that first gentleman, and he wrote the idea generator. And when Joe first joined our team here, one of the first things he said was, hey, there's this thing, it's called Kaizen, and I want you to get to know it. And it's fortunate for us that as we began really talking about our Kaizen journey here at St. Francis, we had some great mentors. We had Norm Bodak come and speak to our leadership team and really lay a firm foundation, right? And then we have our expert in Joe, who was really able to help us begin that journey. And then anybody know this gentleman right here? Who is that? Yeah, Misaki Amai. So we were really fortunate, right? He's the kind of the father of Kaizen. So we were really able to have some great mentors come into our organization, really explain very well what Kaizen is and what it means and what it's all about. So I think that's the next thing, surrounding yourself with great people and getting a great mentor, right? Having people who really understand what it's about, help lay that foundation. Our Kaizen journey, I think our very first year, we had a couple hundred Kaizens submitted by our employees, right? So we rolled it out, we talked to people about Kaizen, laid the foundation, we had a couple hundred. Since then, we've really continued to work on Kaizen as empowerment, engagement, a way to improve your work every day. And every year over year, we have a couple thousand Kaizens submitted, 2,500, 3,000. And this last year, we had over 1,300 of our employees submitted, documented their Kaizens, right? We know there are people out there driving improvements and maybe not even documented. These are just documented Kaizens that go into our database that we're able to quantify every year. And the benefits of Kaizen, of course, are improving our quality, right? You talked about using safety, experience, all of those things are really important to us. Documenting, we're able to articulate those savings back to our leaders so they understand how their employees are really contributing to the mission of the hospital. But Kaizen's a journey, and we're still on that journey. I think it's a never-ending journey, right? So where are we kind of going now? So in the past, right, we really focused on developing Kaizen at an individual level, empowering people, engaging people, encouraging that team Kaizen, right? So if there's something that you want to drive as an improvement, it's going to affect others, get others involved. Today, we're focusing on what we're calling our Franciscan transformation system. Joe, have you mentioned this yet at all?
Yeah, briefly.
Briefly, okay. So I'm not going to go a lot into this, but this is kind of our next journey in Kaizen and really how we're expanding, how we're driving continuous improvement. And it focuses on three main areas of lean transformation. So really strategy deployment, right? Just focusing on what's important to us as an organization, those strategic initiatives, and tying those all the way down to the front line staff, making sure that they're engaged in that. So as they're driving Kaizen, they know what our organizational goals are, what's really important, right? Our service goals, our quality goals, our safety goals. And so as they're focusing on Kaizen, now they have something that's really getting synergy and driving our organizational goals. Value stream management, for us, surgery has been picked as our primary value stream, our initial value stream. So we'll be working on identifying our value stream and then doing our Kaizens around that specific surgery value stream. In daily management, this is where we've been working pretty heavily over the last 6 months. Again, we've had Kaizen very robust in our culture here for over 10 years. But this is really taking it to the next level with really developing our culture and putting in some new structure and processes to help augment and develop that Kaizen culture. That's really what I want to spend a little bit of time talking about. As I mentioned, surgery is our primary value stream throughout our Franciscan Alliance. And we decided here, when we really started thinking about if we were going to create a model area for driving daily management, continuous improvement on a daily basis and taking that to that next level, where is a great leader? Where's a unit that does a good job already, right? That can really help us pull this together. And so we identified our post-surgical unit as the opportunity for our model area. They do a lot of things really well. They have very good employee engagement. Still have opportunities, right? Like we all do. We all have opportunities. So we started at a place where we know we have some good leaders and we have a great staff. So we identified a few leaders to start out with, and the ones pictured on the right, those were our initial group of leaders. What we really wanted to do was say, hey, what does it look like? What's a new management philosophy? How do we lead this daily management? What would it look like? What would that culture be? How does leading with respect for people look? What does that look like? So we picked 4 key leaders, and Lisa is the manager of the model area of our post-surg unit. Sherry Walker is our Director of Service Excellence, which is our patient satisfaction department. Keith Rodebeck is our Director of Engineering and Facilities. So as you know, they kind of have this wide breadth over everything. And then Ann Hughes is manager over environmental services. One of the things that was really important to us this year is our HCAP scores, which is our patient satisfaction scores. And one of our biggest opportunities in the organization was really working on our environment of care. So our engineering and our environmental service folks were really critical in helping us drive those improvements. So those were our initial group, and then our subsequent group included our director of nursing. We got finance involved. As you guys know, if you've driven any projects, you really want to have finance on your side, right? You want them to understand lean, the journey, continuous improvement. And so we've gotten some of our finance folks engaged. Also, Fran is our leadership development person. So as you're walking along and you're talking about management and your philosophy, we thought it was really important to engage that frontline leader that was going to help develop the organization. Right from the very beginning, we got to partner with those folks. They're going to be those leaders throughout the system. So we got her involved. We have the Director of Quality, Director of Environmental Services, and then we have our frontline leadership and educators from our model area engaged. So we really want to pull this leadership team together. So learning to go see, right? Going to the Gemba, that magical place where all the value is added, right? For us, that's our nursing care areas, right? So when we pulled this group together, our very first day, we met where we traditionally meet as leaders, right? Where is that? In a conference room, 8 a.m. sharp, right? In the conference room, we all sit down, and we all want to talk about this thing we're going to do to drive patient experience, and we got to get our charter, right, and all these things. Day number 2 looks completely different. We show up, and we all go into a patient room, an empty patient room, and we stand there for 30 minutes, and we learn to see, and we start this journey of creating a culture of going to the Gemba and learning to see. We have daily meetings for 30 minutes every day. Every day we can get into an empty patient room. That's where we stood for 30 minutes. We started out every day with a prayer. We started out with purpose. It wasn't our purpose. It was their purpose. So we would ask every morning, what is your purpose today? And it was was interesting as we went through this journey, beginning this cultural transformation, people came up like, I don't even know, right? Like, I don't know why I'm here. I'm here to learn, I'm here to understand. Eventually we started hearing things like, I'm here to learn how to engage my employees differently. I'm here to learn how to see from others' perspectives. I'm here to learn how the work really happens. We start hearing these kinds of things as we begin dialoguing day after day, 30 minutes at a time. We saw a lot of this. So what is our purpose? What is the answer to this? In Mark Bryan, we saw a lot of this. I don't know. We weren't there to give them the answers, right? Part of the culture and the journey is self-discovery. We can tell them all the lean tools. We can tell them about respect for people and how it's important. But do they get it? You don't really get it until you have your own experience, right? Until you self-discover. So it was a lot of this at the beginning, and just letting them go through that process, giving them opportunities to discover. A lot of trust and rapport was built in this 30 minutes. And it was funny because at one point, somebody walked over to the smiley faces and said, gosh, I feel like this today. And then that became kind of a thing, right? And eventually, we started, everybody was saying at the end, right? It was, I had this big smiley face, like this is the best 30 minutes of my day. That's what we were hearing from leaders because they were coming across all walks of our organization and they were learning to communicate. They were learning to see each other's perspectives and to dialogue, and they became a very nice functioning team. And I think that's part of it. Does anybody have silos in their organization? Yeah, okay. So it's across every organization, right? We started seeing silos breaking down. We started seeing people who, before they didn't speak each other's language, like the really creative right-brain person talking to our engineer very differently. And they learned how to communicate. This was so important because we started seeing the silos and all of those things break down. So one day, Mark shows up, and we're about 2 weeks into meeting 30 minutes every day. He shows up in scrubs, right? We've been in our business attire every day, meeting in this room, so he shows up in scrubs. And of course, everybody's like, well, what are you doing? He said, I'm going to the Gemba. Today, I'm going to go with Mirari and our environmental services, and I'm going to learn how to clean a patient room. And so he went. And then the next week, I showed up in scrubs. What are you doing? I'm going to the Gemba, right? I'm going to go learn how to clean patient rooms. And then somebody says, I want to do that, right? We led by example. The first person said, I want to do it. Hey, that's great. You guys want to do this? Let's make it happen. So they began pulling for that. They created that. We didn't say, you guys need to go to the Gemba. You need to put on scrubs and you need to go see what's happening, right? We let them discover that. We gave them opportunities and possibilities to see that for themselves. Now, sending leaders out, some of our frontline leaders are really comfortable, right? Some of our other leaders may not be as comfortable. So we did give them some Gemba do's and don'ts, right? We talked about, hey, when you go out there, what do you think some of those things are that are going to be really important to keep in mind, right? So we had lots of dialogue before folks start going out there shadowing and observing. So we could just think through how people might feel, right? So all of a sudden I got this director and they're attached to me, right? I've never met this person before and they're watching everything I do and they're asking questions. How does an employee could they possibly feel? Right? They'd be a little intimidated, or maybe they think, gosh, they're just here to check to see that I'm doing things the right way, or they're trying to find something wrong. So we spend a lot of time talking about Gemba do's and don'ts, right? I'll go through all of these, but, the no-shows. You say you're going to be there, right? The Riddler, asking like 50,000 questions, rapid-firing questions out. They're trying to get their work done, right? You've got to be respectful of their work. The Creeper. I felt like this when I first started walking with people. I just feel like I'm stalking them, right? Like I'm that creeper just kind of looking at them and lurking. The know-it-all, showing them how to do things, right? Like, oh, no, here, scoot over, let me show you. You don't want to be the know-it-all. The speed walker, that's that fly-by, like, hey, I'm in the Gemba. That's the speed walker. Mindfully preoccupied. I'm so guilty of this sometimes. Like, I have to make myself be center and present. Like, when I'm engaged in something, I can be thinking about the next 15 things I have to do, but when you're there, you gotta be present, right? Like you need to just, everything else stops and you're present with them. And then the reactor, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you just did that, right? Like you don't want to react to things. Things happen during the day, and as leaders, we gotta be, kind of conscious of how we're reacting. We don't want to send any mixed messages, right? We want to address safety issues, but maybe not overreact to things. So our leaders began going out, and we just gave them the opportunity to do so, encouraged them, told them how to get scrubs if they didn't have scrubs, and then we began dialoguing about their experiences. So that's what the next days began to follow, was, hey, what did you see? And at first it was, gosh, we found a lot of dust bunnies. Gosh, they didn't do this. Gosh, they didn't do that. And then all of a sudden the conversation started shifting to things like, gosh, everybody seems to have a different understanding, but they can all explain why they're doing the things they're doing. It makes sense, but we started kind of investigating and understanding that there was variation from person to person, that the training maybe wasn't consistent, some of those kinds of things, right? So we kind of discovered some of those things, and of course we came up with this large list of problems. But we didn't address those, right? That was the hardest things for our leaders was, you see these things, they're going on every day. You're not going to fix every single problem, right? You're not going to go out there and just start whittling away at problems. So we let them get a comprehensive list of issues, and I'll show you what we did with that a little later. But they learned to see. Part of this is really about team and culture and how we were developing that. So as they got through their Gemba experiences, right, we kept encouraging them to go back out. We met for breakfast one morning, and we talked about, what are you guys learning? What are the key takeaways? And this is really what our leaders found was, hey, we got to focus on slowing down. As leaders, we're like this. We got to get things done. We see an issue, we got to get it resolved, right? We're the hero. We're the problem solvers. We go in, we see something, we feel like we have to fix it and own it. We got to slow down and let other people be those problem solvers. Develop relationships, and I heard that, right? Relationships-based leadership, so important in a culture of Kaizen. This is really what we did when we sent them out. We didn't tell them to find problems. We said, hey, go make a connection with staff. Go meet somebody new. Find out who their kids are. They have pets, right? Make connections with people. That's what we got to do. Develop relationships. Be transparent, and then focus on process, right? We focus on the positives with people, getting to know them, but we don't fault people. We look at process. So, Gitchigambutsu. Anybody ever heard this term? All right, so I think of just kind of like getting your boots on and going and seeing, right? To me, it's a little different nuance. Like the Gemba is that magical place where the work occurs, where that value is added. Gitchigambutsu is that getting your boots on and just getting into the trenches. And Toyota leadership believes that leaders, to be actively engaged in the work, really should have to wash their hands at least 3 times a day. And so we started talking about, what does that look like for us as leaders? If we were so engaged that we had to stop and wash our hands 3 times a day, what would that look like? And so you see our managers and directors actively engaging in environmental service work. They were trying to develop a deeper understanding of the work, and they were developing relationships with our environmental service staff as they were doing it. We were there to help. We were there to learn. We weren't there to find fault and problems. Does that make sense? So it's really getting your boots on, getting out there. Now, I don't think anybody's going to let me do brain surgery, right? No matter how much I ask, nobody's going to let me do it. But whatever you can do, you can hold over a patient for a nurse, right? You can go get a cup of ice if the nurse says that's okay. However you can get in and engage is one way. We really encouraged our leaders to get in and understand and develop relationships and a deeper knowledge. The relationships, again, we sent them out to make relationships, build those connections, and then begin talking about, what do you get from it? What do they get from it, right? So really being conscious about that cultural transformation piece, that leader transformation, helping them articulate what they were experiencing and sharing those experiences with each other. This is Amy, our director of accounting, and she is our typical accountant, right? Like, she didn't spend a lot of time at the Gemba. Now you can't keep her away. She's there. She's excited about being there. She's asking questions like, why do we transfer our patients from one bed to another when they're in pain? What can we do about that, right? She is seeing things clinically now, very different, and engaging with our staff. One of the other things that I love about having Amy there is that she saw one of our improvements, and we were going to have to ask for some money to spread this, because it was one of those things that was so great. We're like, hey, everybody in the hospital should get this. She said, I'll sign the purchase order. She saw it, she experienced it, she was engaged and connected with the work, and we haven't had any barriers because we have the right people involved that are able to champion for us. Keith on the end there is our engineer. And he's, I don't want to stereotype engineers, but we now have like a heavy engineer day, right? He's kind of that, everything's pulled together. And as he went out, he kind of started with environmental services, and then he said one day, I want to go with a patient care assistant, right, like our nursing assistants. And he came back, and he was changed. It was amazing. His body language was different. He's like, wow. He's like, I have a whole different respect for what happens on the unit. And I learned so much, and I feel so much compassion for our patients. They're so vulnerable. And I'm hearing words like vulnerable out of this engineer's mouth, right? Like he had totally shifted. So people are changing through this culture process. We're just creating the possibilities, and they are going through an experience and changing internally. We're not changing who they are, right? We're just letting them see things a little differently so they can make those connects themselves. In the middle here, this is Rich, our manager, and then our vice president of nursing, Susan McRoberts, who is a fabulous champion. But Susan came up, we had a celebration one day, 100 days, no falls on the unit. And so Susan came up, and the relationships that have been built over time with folks, he came up to Mark and said, Mark, if you take a picture of Susan and I together, and the respect and the relationship was so obvious between these two. We have a vice president with our frontline staff, and they're making connections and relationships. And I think that's so important to encourage that within your organization, because if there's a safety concern, if there's a quality concern, they're going to go to that person, right? They're going to be comfortable having those kinds of tough dialogues. If those relationships aren't there, trust is built over time. You can't just go up to somebody you don't know and maybe give them the full story, or not everybody's going to be comfortable doing it. So building these kinds of relationships are so critical to drawing safety and quality that it's worth the time and creating possibilities for those relationships to develop. So, our Gemba observations. So again, when you're out there, you can't help but to see opportunities, right? Like you're out there, you're in the work, you see it, you begin seeing things differently. You start seeing the barriers, you start hearing the barriers, they will tell you. One of the greatest things was we noticed on one of our environmental service cards that Merari had this really different broom. It was like a cut-off wood broom with the old straws. Everybody else had these kind of industrial-looking ones. And we asked her, Merari, why do you have this kind of cut-off broom? And she said, I can't get to this thing under the bed, and those other ones don't broom them up well. So she identified a problem with maybe the equipment that we were using. She had created her own solution. We needed to kind of work through that as a team. But we saw things because we were out there interacting with people differently. So we had this huge list. We decided, gosh, we've got all these problems. How are we going to work through it? So we started working through a continuous improvement board. It started out being called a problem-solving board, and today now we're calling it a continuous improvement board. It is still in painter's tape on our wall in our model area, right? It is under development itself. The process is under development. We're not making anything permanent. We're letting our leaders and our staff work through how do we come together to drive these Kaizens, right? We've got all these opportunities. So there's an evolution of our continuous improvement board. And this allowed us to really take Kaizen to that next level with our team, with our employees and with our frontline managers, and start developing some of that A3 thinking, problem solving. And we started out very simple, right? Just the what and how. And we began taking our huddles and talking about things that we saw. And then we would go engage our frontline staff in helping us talk through those issues and possible solutions and testing change. Do you think this went really fast? It did. It took us 4 months to drive one improvement because we still had to learn to see, right? Where some people would say, no, we can't do that. We have to really challenge those things. Today it sounds really different. But for the first 4 months, we still heard, well, we did that already. Well, no, we can't do that. So we did have to work through a lot of those things. And it was part of that, us developing and learning as leaders how to say yes, or what if, or what could we, right? Asking things a little differently. So again, this is a little bit closer to what it looks like today as we've kind of evolved our A3 and how we go through that problem solving. And so this group of leaders and some of our frontline staff have gotten pretty sophisticated in how they speak to what a problem is and how they work through that problem-solving process. And so this is all about developing people, and it takes time. It takes examples, right? It takes experience. And so we created the opportunity for them to work through their problems together, to learn how to move through that continuous improvement method. Today, just a couple of things I want to point out. As we go through your typical A3, we've kind of modified, right? We've created this visual cue here. So the green dot means when we come to this board every day, we think everything's on task. We don't have to spend a lot of time there talking about it. If it's a red dot, we know there's a barrier, and we have to spend some time talking through that. And so we've created some visual cues to help us walk through this problem-solving process as leaders. And again, we have that nice cross-section. So as we're dealing with facility issues, as regulatory issues come up, we have the right people in the room, or at least the people who can say, I can find that out. So we begin creating a team around us that's really going to help us. Oh, thank you.
That's a Kaizen.
I would still walk around.
Oh, yeah.
So the waste of motion is probably
No.
So getting the right people in the room, really taking the time to let them evolve. And through all of this, I have to mention one of the other things that we do in business transformation through developing people is we offer training. So we offer Yellow Belt class, which is an 8-hour class that has all the kind of fundamentals, some lean concepts. They actually go through problem-solving process, and they learn how to do a fishbone. They do a fishbone. They do a value stream map. By the end, they're creating an A3, and they do it all on a pizza delivery process, right? So we go through and they actually apply tools. They learn things like one-piece flow, FIFO, lots of little basic concepts, so they're able to kind of move into continuous improvement. In our model area, while we were working with our leaders and we were doing this, we were also developing our staff. That time was the time we were getting their staff through the Yellow Belt training. So our environmental service staff, our engineering staff, the folks that we're really engaging with, they're getting this training. And so we're helping develop those folks so they can come with some tools. And then we're there just to really help facilitate them applying that and help encouraging that culture. So all those observations of the Gemba with our environmental service folks I mentioned, it created this giant list of opportunities of things that we saw, potential solutions. And so we began introducing the idea with variation in work that we see. What's one of those possible solutions that you're going to consider? If you have a process and there's lots of variation from person to person, standard work might be one of those things that would help reduce some of that variation from person to person. And so instead of tackling the dust bunnies under the bed, we stood back and said, gosh, we have this policy. This is a 7-step policy for cleaning. And it creates a lot of latitude for folks to do it differently. So our leaders have actively engaged side by side with our environmental service staff, our partners in environmental service, and they are working through about 120 steps of cleaning a discharge basement room. It takes time. This is really getting in and developing a deep understanding of the work and being very thoughtful and engaging. It's not the manager sitting down and saying, this is how I want you to do it. It's a partnership with the frontline staff. They've created that bond, that relationship. They have stand-up meetings every day where they talk about the steps, what they're doing, what's working, what's not working, how they should reorder things. And then as they go through that, they're documenting a visual training guide for us to take that and spread that once we start to see that we have the right steps in the right order. And so eventually, we'll move this into auditing process, and we'll begin introducing our consumer law board, right? And so one of the things was when we talked with our leaders and they were rounding with our environmental service staff, they asked for this. They didn't know what they were asking for, but they said, when we go into a room, we don't know what good looks like. We don't know what they're supposed to do. Okay. So as we begin to develop this, now they're asking for this. This isn't us saying, we're going to do standard work. We're going to push in an audit process. They're identifying the need for these things, and then we're helping them buy the tools in the process. So again, it's that culture piece. It's for us, it's not going in and pushing in the tools and the methods and focusing on that. It's really just creating that space where they can pull for it, and we're just there to provide that support. because we've had such a great partnership with our environmental service staff in this department, they are fabulous. They realized that our strategic goals were around quiet and cleanliness. And we had lots of dialogue about that. They began to identify Kaizens on their own, right? So we weren't having to say, hey, what could you do to be quieter? They started identifying things and they're like, hey, my carts and barrels are really noisy, right? They started realizing that they were making a lot of ruckus going up and down those halls. And they started trying things. We came in and Candace had said, well, I oiled the wheels. WD-40'd the wheels. That helped a little bit, but there's still all this noise and ruckus, right? Oh, what did you do about? What do you think the causes of that? What do you think that's about? Well, I think it's when the barrels aren't full, when they're empty, right? Oh, okay, well, what could you do about that? You should begin weighting it, trying to put weight in the bottom. Right, she's just going through test and change, right? That's what we want to encourage with Kaizen. We want them to explore ideas. We want them to identify the root cause. It'd be easy for us to swoop in and our engineers to break it down and take it apart and tell them this is what we could do. But we got frontline staff with the work that they do every day now thinking about how they affect patient experience, what's causing it, and testing changes. So some great things have come of this. So working with them, we've created the A3 for this, and the carts that rolled down, they had some old metal carts, and they'd been exploring possibilities of changing our carts. So we had these old metal carts, and when they would go down, they were almost 80 decibels. Our normal room noise is about 35 decibels. So there would be just this giant spike in noise when you would push this cart down the hall, and you could just hear it coming. The barrels were also loud. And so as they tested these they changed out the wheels. You can see here, we have a new cart. And then even to reduce the vibration more, they put these bands around it to really help reduce that vibration. And they actually reduce decibels from 78 to 38. That's a significant reduction in noise. And you know how many times a cleaning cart goes up and down right past a patient room every day? A lot. And the interesting thing was our leaders during this time were rounding on patients, and they were hearing things like, gosh, it's really noisy at night. There's these carts that go down. I think it's the people coming through and picking up the trash. Right? So we were hearing this back from our customers. We knew we were doing the right things. We knew our employees were identifying and driving the right things. So one of the other things is as our staff begin identifying these things, with Kaizen, it's so important that we recognize the employees for the work that they do, that we celebrate those successes. So when our Kaizens get to that done time, we do a formal celebration. And it's informal, formal. But we invite the employees in, and we have during our huddle time, where our leaders are there, we have them show their improvement or talk about their improvement. And then, of course, we celebrate that with them. And this is Candace here pushing the noisy metal cart, and then Amy demonstrating the quieter cart. And I want you to notice this, that magic moment right here when our director in accounting said, I'll make sure that purchase order gets signed. She saw it, she saw the improvement, and now we have a champion, right? And everybody felt so good, right? People feel good because we've recognized the good work that they've done. So that's part of that cultural piece, making sure that we celebrate. The waiting room doors. This was, I want to point out the date here. We started this back in October when we really were kind of pulling our leaders together. And so on the days that we could not meet in a patient room, right, if all our rooms were full, and that would happen kind of Tuesday. Monday we could get into a room, Tuesday we're full. We would go, we'd sit in the waiting room. And over a period of time, people would be like, holy smokes, those doors are noisy. And of course, we got our little decibel rating and looked at it. It was almost 80 decibels. And so we didn't say anything about it. We just let our group keep identifying it. And our director of engineering, very early on in the process, was like, well, we already fixed that. Well, that was already fixed. It already came through, right? We're done, check. He's like, but gosh, that still is really noisy. Because he's sitting out there and we're talking. Every time he'd go to talk, the door would be like, boom, 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 boom. Being at the Gemba, you see lots of different things. And I would hear those things like, gosh, I thought we'd already fixed that, we addressed it, we moved on. And they were beginning to have these ahas about, sometimes we think we put in a solution and maybe it's not really fixed the problem or something's changed and we have to go back and evaluate and see. And we heard that over time and time again from our leaders as a lesson that they learned from continually being at the Gemba. It wasn't a one-time thing. They weren't just passing through. They were spending time on a regular basis every day there, so they began to see and understand things very differently. So that door was opening and closing about the same amount of time, so it was just a constant boom. Very early on, somebody said, can't we just leave these doors open? They're open as much as they're closed. Why are they opening and closing so much? And then we had to work through lots of barriers. This is when we first, very early on, started realizing all the silos and barriers as leaders we put up, right? Gosh, well, we open those doors, it's going to affect the airflow of the hospital, and we can't have that because it's infection and all those other things. And so that's a pretty complicated process. We really have to study that. Okay, can we study that? Our engineers and brought in our consultants, and they did an airflow study throughout the hospital. We kept asking this question over and over again. Over a period of time, we're like, well, what else could we do? So we had the engineers come down at the Gemba. Imagine that, right? The engineers standing in front of the door going, well, if we did this or if we did that, I think it's this and that, right? And they began problem solving with the nursing staff to help solve the problem. So they're at the Gemba, problem solving, working on these kinds of issues, promoting that relationship between nursing and facilities. And they're connecting and working on problems together. So they worked through several issues. About 3 months later, the airflow study was done. We worked through the fact that it was not a fire door, it's a smoke door, so that wasn't an issue, right? There's all these things in hospitals we have to work through. Something so simple becomes so complicated. Imagine being a staff and how you would feel if you came up with this idea and you heard, what's a fire door? Well, it's an airflow issue. Well, we can't do this, right? That's what happens. So they need leaders to help them work through that. They need leaders to begin saying, hey, let's think about it this way. What if we thought about it that way? So we now have these doors open from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. We have no more kabang, kabang, kabang. Even though we had made some continuous improvement as they worked on the door, they got the doors level and all those things, they reduced it by half. We totally eliminated it through continuous improvement, right? We continue to ask that question. We learned a lot as a leadership group about how we problem solve silos, how we can support our staff better in continuous improvement. I want to point out here, I don't know if I mentioned it, but we enter all of these when they're done in the done column. When we celebrate, we make sure everyone that was involved in those improvements get credit. It gets entered into our Kaizen database. We track these improvements so we can share, report out, show best practice. People can search and find improvements. So if they're having a similar problem, I don't know if Joe has gone into how we do that, but they can search in our Kaizen database by keywords. So anything in our titles, anything in our keywords, they're able to pull up and find ideas. And then we encourage people, hey, if you see a solution in there and you try it, that's your Kaizen, right? You're changing for the good or better. So it's another way to promote and share. So we make sure we document all those.
I think Joe was going to show the Kaizen database at some point this morning.
Oh,
but I was going to ask, I saw where it says Kaizen entered on something like this, where there were multiple different improvements. Do you guys enter multiple Kaizens or one for the A3?
Yeah, as we went along, we made sure that they got credit for all the different improvements because it is a continuous improvement process, right? So everything is a change for the better, and we want to promote that continual improvement mentality, right? So you made this change, it made it better, that was a Kaizen. You did the next thing, that was a Kaizen. So I think it's really important just to recognize the good work that they're doing. And some of these, I know this doesn't seem like a complex problem, but in the problem solving and getting it done part, it really did become very complex. So yes, absolutely. And we always make a decision now, do we adopt it, do we abandon, do we adjust, right? So this is just, we've built some of these things as visual cues to help us think through that problem solving process when we're at the board. Again, this was one of the most fabulous celebrations because it was 4 months and a lot of learning, but it was great to have all of our engineer partners up there. And to hear our director of engineering really speaking very differently and very authentically about what he learned in the process in his partnership with nursing. And to be able to break some of those walls down and say, hey, we may not have been the best partners in the past, but man, we learned a lot on this. And he's saying this to our nurses, and to our directors and nurses and say, hey, we want to partner with you. We get it. Like, we get it. This is complex. And so those are the kinds of things in that culture that really, I think for us, having some of these people who touch so broadly across the organization are just really going to help continue to excel that culture throughout the organization. Oops. So again, I mentioned during this time when we were kind of going out and working with individual staff, but we were really spending time with our leaders and helping them have those experiences. We were sending our nursing staff and all of our environmental service staff were getting through yellow belt training, so they would be exposed to some tools and some methods. This is our, again, not fancy, it's still under development, but this is our Gemba board, right? This is where we tie those things that are important to us as an organization, safety, quality, service, people, finance, and we have our goals, and they're tied to, our departmental goals are tied to our organizational goals, which are tied to our corporate goals, right? We connected those down. We met with the leader of the department. We said, hey, what's important to you around safety, quality, right, service? What's important to you? What do you and your staff want to get your arms around? We picked them, and then we began working through medication. We started working through quiet, right, cleanliness, all of those kinds of things. So you see the metrics, and you see the A3s that we're working through there. So we're ready to really, we've been engaging with individuals, right? But now we're like, how do we start really driving this? How do we want to get everyone involved? Because that's the point, right? We want to get everyone involved. And it's really hard. Does anybody else have a problem getting people away for events or, yeah. So we're like, if this is called daily management, how are we going to do that, right? If we're trying to drive improvement on a daily basis, how do we get everyone involved? So as our people, we have 60% of the nursing staff gone through Yellow Belt, all of our environmental service people on the department, lots of our engineering staff. So Mark and Allison put up the bones of a fish in the nursing station, kind of out of sight, but up with painter's tape. A noise was in one, and then equipment was in the other. That was one of the things nurses said. We asked them, what kinds of things are important to you? What do you really, if we're going to work through some problems, what are those pain points for you? And we got their feedback, and we prioritized equipment was one of them. And then noise is tied to our strategic initiatives. So this is, you see down here, they created a mechanism with all the employees there and gave them stars for however many stickies they put up, right? And of course we did a drawing and some other things like that to encourage folks. We had great participation in this first activity, really soliciting all those things that they think are affecting noise. We didn't have to stop their work. We noticed, and I didn't mention, Rich, you saw him with his arm around our vice president of nursing. He came to Mark one day and said, Mark, I think we could do one of those fishbone things. We didn't decide we were going to put up a fishbone. Like I failed to mention, one of the nursing staff and said, I think we can do that, right? If you got for Yellow Belt, it's like, we're ready. Let us do it. So that's how that fish evolved. Again, a pull for the tool, not a push. Took all those, and then we began prioritizing those. Let the staff have stickies, told them to go out and vote on the things they thought were most important. That we would work through things, but we wanted to know where they wanted us to start with them. So again, letting them have control over what's happening, where we're focusing our energy, and then begin working with some of those things. We're getting faster at some of the bigger things. We, again, have a great culture of Kaizen here. We have people who work through problems on a daily basis. But watching this evolve and seeing how much faster we're getting at it and more complex problems we're getting faster at it is because we've learned how to, in this group, really break down and remove some of those barriers differently than we have in the past, help augment and really let the employees lead. And this is, we had worked through another Kaizen. We had just gone from a corded for our medications. When patients would take a medicine, we would scan that into our electronic medical record, scan their barcode, so we knew this patient got this drug. And we had moved to some new technology, and we had had a cord problem. And so our champion that was implementing this thing came to me one day and said, Mischelle, I have this huge problem. We've got this new technology. We have to scan the pumps now. And the pumps are on the opposite side of the bed. It's the armband and the corded thing that we have to use, and we're draping it over the patients. And she went through, we set up a simulation. I don't have a picture of it up here, but we set up a simulation for her. We brought some nurses into our sim room. We have a locked up patient room. and just let them problem solve. They went through scenarios, they created all these great workarounds. I mean, it was fabulous. Like, they really problem solved and created some very creative strategies. Nurses are very creative. If there's a workaround, they will find it. So they created all these possibilities, and we took some photos, and they took that back to the director of IT and said, if we trialed all these things, this is the best we can come up with. We really think we need wireless scanners, and here's why. And they had pictures and evidence and information, and guess what we got? Because we had pictures of cords being draped across patients, right? We got wireless scanners. So they walked through that. They created solutions, and they were able to articulate a need that we didn't have budgeted. So we've now got them thinking and showing different stories. But one of the continuous improvements from that was our nursing staff said, these new wireless scanners are fabulous, but they're noisy. And so we measured it, and they were, I think it was almost, where does that say? Does it say there? 62, yeah, on beep. And they're making beeps, right? It's like beep here, and then beep that, and then I beep that, and it's just constant. And that happens throughout the night too, right? Like, I'm trying to sleep, and I'm changing IV bags, and so staff are paying attention to this. So they went back to the champion and said, hey, is there anything that we can do to lower the volume of the beep on this? And she did one better. She gave them this little barcode, and they were able to change it to a vibration that reduced it down to 45, and then that was 17 decibel reduction. Again, now the staff are engaged. Now they're paying attention to it. Now they're working with others to create solutions. So again, it's really about creating those opportunities and potential for them to begin thinking through their problems differently with respect to people. Leaders being there not to be the hero or the problem solver, but really being there to eliminate those barriers and encourage those employees for their ideas, for their problems, working through it. So it's a never-ending journey. That's kind of where we are now. I know I'm probably didn't leave us much time for questions, but I'll see if there's anything I can answer.
Yeah, I think we can do a few questions. I'm not sure if Holland is here yet, so we'll play it by ear. Go ahead.
Okay, you give me the.
Okay.
Any questions or?
I have a question about the fish. Where you have all the post-it notes on there. So people put their post-it notes on there, were those opportunities or were they putting those solutions that they were posting?
They were posting problems that they saw. And so now we have a stack of A3 started where we have problem statements created. So from that priority list, we now have a stack like this. And so now our leader is back. She was on vacation for a week, and those are going to start going up on that opportunity on our continuous improvement board, and we'll begin working through those, creating, really understanding the problem and then working through improvement ideas from there.
So when you were thinking about going to Gemba and having leadership at, frankly, range levels, directors, even vice presidents, maybe partner with shadow, even frontline staff, that are learning how to clean and facial increases. How did you, we were talking earlier about how important trust is, right? Can you speak a little bit more about what was done to give the frontline staff assurance that this is okay and not to be nervous about this, and maybe a little bit more on that?
Yeah, with our environmental service staff, first it was Mark and myself. They got kind of used to us, right? And we would explain why we were there and what we were doing. And hey, we're just here to learn from you, right? We just want to see, show us, teach us what you do. We began building that, so they knew that's really what we were there for. We didn't identify problems. We didn't point things out. We started approaching them in that way, so they got used to us. And then as we began introducing other leaders, right, they were coached in that room for 30 minutes at a time on, okay, what do you want to create with this person? How are you going to create that? And so we set them up for success by having that dialogue first. And then we've been told, Ferrari and the other folks that were up there at the time, hey, you're just going to have to forgive us, right? This is new. Give us some grace. We're learning to see things differently, and we're asking you to help us with it. And so I think that transparency part was really important, and I think it created a little bit of a sense of, okay, this is all right. We'll go with it.
And is Mark your lean expert?
Yes, yes.
So it started then with you being sort of transformation, sort of process improvement, and Mark your lean expert going, put your foot in the water.
Yeah, just to start that, because we knew how we wanted to approach them, right? We knew what we wanted to create with them. We knew trust was important. We knew we couldn't point out problems, that we needed to develop a partnership with them, and we needed to begin building that trust and a shared platform for us to start allowing other leaders to experiment in that. But they were great. Our environmental service staff were just fabulous, and they were very gracious with our leaders. And now they're like, hey, this is great. And even Candace said, I don't care who it is. You know, we were like, hey, the vice president of nursing is coming down. She's like, well, it's better for me to just not even know. It's great. Just they can all come, right? Like, it doesn't matter. It's okay with it.
I do have one other question. So it relates to the A3 approach. You know, that's obviously, so you have all the Kaizens with A3. So the A3 is probably more something that bubbles up saying actually this is not going to be just a single Kaizen. This requires more collaboration and solve the problem. But you also have a stoplight approach to that. How long, if you have a number of A3s where you think you pretty much solved the problem, how long do you keep that posted somewhere to where it can possibly turn from green to yellow or yellow to red?
We're still working through those. Like I said, some of these improvements were from our very beginning, and so they've been red and green, and the stickies are like this thick on them because they've been up there for a while. So honestly, we're at that place now where we are at the place of trying to decide how long do we monitor these things, do we check them off? How are we going to display these? We don't want these things to go away. What is it going to look like? Do we create a binder and keep it up on like just flip charts for people to be able to go through what we've done all year long? So that's kind of really where we are now. We're, you know, just 6 months into this journey. And so I think those will be the things that we'll probably work out in the next 6 months, which is kind of what makes sense, and it'll evolve over the next year or 2, 5, 10.